Welcome to Don't Chuck It Up, the podcast that takes the stress out of the college search and the college application process. I'm your host, Chuck, your friendly college counselor, and today we're learning about a group of colleges that most of you have probably never heard of, and I wanted to bring a guest on to talk about the ELCA colleges and universities. So I'd like to welcome Lamont Wells, who is the executive director of the network of the ELCA colleges and universities. So Lamont, welcome to the Don't Chuck It Up podcast.
Thank you, Chuck. I'm happy to be here.
I am so excited that we were finally able to connect, emails, connections, schedules, all that fun stuff. But I'm glad that we are able to sit down and have this conversation. Before we dive in, though, I'm going to give you a moment to introduce yourself so my guests know who you are.
Yeah. So I'm Lamont Anthony Wells, and I am a native Philadelphian. I'm a true Philadelphian in all kinds of ways, although I have lived in New York and in the South for quite a bit of time in Atlanta, Georgia. A product of HBCUs, Morehouse College, and now connected into the Lutheran tradition in higher education, particularly our 28 ELCA colleges and universities.
Well, awesome. And you serve as the executive director of the network of those 28 colleges and universities. So you get to work with a wide variety of schools that are all connected to the ELCA. So we've got an acronym. What the heck is the ELCA?
The ELCA is the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, which is one of the largest branches of Protestant denominations that aligns itself with the Lutheran framework and Lutheran theology and traditions. Heavily integrated from a group of immigrants into the U.S., particularly Norwegian, Scandinavian, Finlandians, all of those Danish Americans became a big piece of our network. All schools founded within the Lutheran tradition from a faith tradition, either the Lutheran Church in America or the American Lutheran Church, somewhere in history, having some type of foundation. Our oldest school, Capital University in Columbus, Ohio, and then Gettysburg. So all of them were around the early ages of Lutheran higher education, moving on down to our baby school, California Lutheran, which is in Thousand Oaks. So we stretch a wide stretch of the U.S. from many of the schools are heavily in the Midwest, and we have a couple of schools out in the western parts. One school in Canada, connected to the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Canada. Which is Luther College there in Saskatchewan.
I would say Luther College Canada, because we also have a Luther College in Iowa. Can't mix those up because they're very different personalities. I will, full disclosure, I was raised in the ELCA church, which is how I became familiar with a lot of these colleges. I applied to many of them when I was in high school. And I just
Did we do right by you, Chuck? Did we do right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I loved my experience as someone who was raised in the ELCA, and I love everything that I experienced through that, and I was involved in both church and in summer camp. And I really have found, now that I'm a college counselor and I've been in higher education now for 25 years, that most parents and counselors and even students have never heard of the ELCA colleges and universities. However, as we were chatting just yesterday, you made an excellent point that people probably have heard of these colleges, but did not realize that they are connected to the ELCA. So what should people be knowing about the ELCA? What is the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America all about?
Yeah. So we're probably the most progressive end of a Lutheran tradition, right? Which has the true framework and a theology that is distinct from the Catholic tradition, right? And some of their rubrics and governance models. And we see ourselves as connecting people directly in a faith tradition that is purposeful, realizing that it's not about works, that you can't make yourself whole and well, but it's a sense of our connection to God's divine grace, if you will, unmerited favor, nothing that you can do. And as a part of that core value that we have is that we are saved, or we are connected to God through God's grace and God's mercy, that we make ourselves, we're distinct, because some denominations talk about your do's and your don'ts, what you can and cannot do, and are very restrictive in ways in which that we are not wanton, but we are connected through understanding that it is only through God's grace and mercy, no goodness of our own, that we can lean into a connection with God.
Well, and I love that description, and I think that's really appropriate and really helps people understand what that is. I also want to make sure that people understand that if students or parents are looking at ELCA colleges, do they have to be a member of an ELCA church or congregation?
And that's what makes us distinct. And we have been growing in so many different ways. And that's the thing that I love about the Lutheran heritage, right? It's really understanding what the Lutheran higher education core values are, which is, vocational identity. And we can talk about that and go deeper in that later. But the answer is absolutely not. Many of our schools, and I can tell you right now, have grown and expanded in ways that our interfaith and interreligious connections, or no religion at all, is very, very important, because we're all into the critical inquiry, right? We want people to be curious about so many things. So we create, I think, 28 spaces of educational exploration, where they're incubators for people to wrestle with ideas that they don't get to wrestle with, or will wrestle with in future times in their life, in the corporate workspace and in the community workspace as well. So I would say that there are schools like Muhlenberg, right, which is in Allentown, Pennsylvania, obviously founded by Lutherans, intended to educate the Lutheran community, but then definitely opened it up to others. And so we have as a tagline called Rooted and Open, which is a part of our white paper, our manifesto of what we mean by the invitation to individuals to come into Lutheran higher education. So we call ourselves Rooted and Open, rooted in the Lutheran core values, right? But yet open to many other traditions. So schools like Muhlenberg, founded with the Lutheran tradition, became, as gentrification and other things and demographics changed, the area around Allentown became predominantly Jewish. And we saw an opportunity to realize that our Lutheran faith is not in conflict with other groups. And we want individuals to learn together and grow together. And now they are predominantly Jewish student population at that institution. The same thing in Minnesota, like a school like Augsburg, there in St. Paul, Minneapolis, Minnesota, where high Islamic or Muslim populations surround that area, obviously through immigration, Somalians and other things like that. And they have done a great job of opening themselves up. And this trend goes through all of our institutions. We're about all inclusive, none exclusive. And we see ourselves, again, rooted in our tradition, right? We don't hide that under a bushel, but also open and affirming, not just tolerating, right? The true sense of religious pluralism and those kinds of things that helps us to learn from each other, because we all must live together in this world. And we see that as a positive.
And I think you used two examples of colleges that people may have heard of and didn't realize that they were ELCA colleges and universities. I have been to both Muhlenberg and Augsburg. Muhlenberg, as you said, is now majority Jewish identifying as far as students when they list what faith tradition that they are most connected to. They are so open-minded as an ELCA college that they even have a kosher kitchen, which I think when you think of colleges that are connected to Christianity, you may not think that they would have something like a kosher kitchen, but that really shows the welcoming and inclusive nature that the ELCA church really believes in, and inviting everyone to be a part of, as you said, the roots and the foundations of the Lutheran ideas. And Augsburg is one of the few colleges that went from a majority all-white institution to now a majority underrepresented serving institution in an urban area. So
Yes.
Augsburg is located in Minneapolis. It is one of the only private schools on the Minneapolis side. It is right next to the University of Minnesota Twin Cities and
Across.
really provides an incredible, safe, diverse, inclusive area for students to be able to go to college at a private university in Minneapolis.
Mm-hmm. And those opportunities expand to all the schools in various ways. Pacific Lutheran in Tacoma, Washington,
Yeah.
high connections to becoming an HSI and an AAPNI institution, all of those kinds of things. It's really about our institutions connecting and rooting themselves in the community around them and not seeing it as a threat, but seeing it not as a taking advantage of, but an open opportunity. Our tagline for the network of ELCA colleges and universities is this term, and I love, and it's called, it says, so that all may flourish.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's everybody. We care about everybody flourishing. Anyone who comes through our doors will understand a true connection to who they are and what their divine destiny is. And we're not ashamed of that, right? Like, we want people not to just get a job, but we want people to be able to understand that their life has a sense of calling, if you will, or sense of purpose. Yep. Whatever language you want to use. Right. We talk about it in the sense of vocational identity. And I think that is best explored in a creative space, a safe space, and a sacred space where you have an institution that is open, but also curating its curriculums through a kind of a strong tradition that has proven well. And so the effects of our graduates in the world are amazing.
Yeah, and I've always been impressed by with the 28 different institutions across the United States and Canada. We can't forget our friends up in Canada, that there are a wide variety of majors and opportunities, and as you said, vocational education that allow students to explore a multitude of career paths and what their calling really is. And that is a fundamental idea of Lutheran is like, who are you meant to be? Who is God calling you to be, whether you are Christian, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, or atheist and agnostic. Like, I have sent students of a wide variety of backgrounds to ELCA colleges and universities. None of them have ever come back to me and said, oh, I felt like I was being converted to being a Lutheran, or I had to go to church or chapel or, services all the time. So talk about what are the religious components that a student might experience while they are at an ELCA college or university.
I connected to, I use the term religious pluralism, right? And I made the distinction that it's not just tolerating other religions, right? Just adding it on, right? But it's really creating an understanding, a true understanding that can help your own framework of mindset grow. Right? It allows an opportunity for seekers, those who have no tradition, to get in tune with the common good for everyone, right? Some may call it secularism or humanism or all those kinds of things like that. And we're able to embrace it because we don't see it as a threat to the foundations of what we believe. We believe that, especially an education experience, and the world should have a sense of access, and accessibility for everyone. And what I hear from employers the most is that they desire graduates who are able to talk to consumers on multi-levels. Yep. And you get that at an institution. You get that through a liberal arts education, yep. But you definitely get that at the size of our small private institutions, where on the campus, not just religion, I know you're asking me directly about the faith tradition, but using their faith and how does their faith coincide and live alongside other faith traditions without being disrespectful, dismissive, and encouraging a strong sense of curiosity and critical inquiry.
Yeah, and I think that all is connected in higher education, in particular in liberal arts. And let's be honest, all of the ELCA colleges and universities are fundamentally rooted in the liberal arts education. That is where that comes from. It is the tenets of what Martin Luther was talking about, is being educated across different genres and backgrounds, and not just being focused on one thing. But I also really love that the ELCA colleges and universities are open to all sorts of identity backgrounds. Come as you are, rather than, you have to fit into a certain box. And I think right now in society, there's this shutting off of access and shutting off of inclusivity and shutting off of people that are different than ourselves. And I'm always looking for colleges and universities that are saying, no, we disagree with that mindset. We are actually opening doors and opening access. So talk about what is the inclusivity and access amongst the ELCA colleges and universities.
I like to say, and there's an asterisk to this statement. So again, early on during the Protestant Reformation, Martin Luther was writing about a lot of different things in the understanding of what society could look like, what is religion's purpose in society, and particularly when it came to education in the Lake Korea there in Wittenberg, Germany, one of the earliest institutions. Our church was founded in a higher education institution. So let's just go there, right? Not alongside a river somewhere we saw dove or whatever, right? But in higher education. So just understand that is a part of our foundation. So education is a true part of our foundation. Martin Luther said something that was very strong, and I still lean into when I talk about accessibility. He saw education as an opportunity for everybody to be educated. And he said even little girls or young girls at that time should be a part. Remember, we were in a patriarchal society early on, and we still are in a lot of different ways, right? We have more access now for gender diversity, but back then, over 500 some years ago, that was definitely countercultural, right? Now, that's what I'm going to give the asterisk, right? And because he also said some things that were disparaging against Jews, right, at that time, and Hebrews. So, and we had to clean those up over the years as a part of our tradition and make those apologies, right? And
Absolutely.
so a church like, exactly. So that accessibility for women did not really come into full fruition for several hundred years after that. And so the accessibility and the level of inclusivity expanded over the years, and we are determined to keep that going on. I know DEI is the word that people don't, but it's a part of our mission: diversity, equity, and inclusion of everyone. So we've done the expansion over the years in all of our NECU schools, co-ed, either though they may have been founded in particular ways, but we also saw it for the area of the underserved populations, the racially minoritized populations, of expanding that as well. So I would say the crux of what we have been after is living back into our original purpose, right? Which is what we want individuals to do, right? What is your divine purpose? What has Allah called you to do, right? If you're Hindu or whatever you are, right? Like, what is your divine destiny? And how will that affect the common good of everyone? So we use a high level of inclusive practices. We have a document called So That All May Belong, which clearly articulates what we believe as far as it goes for high levels of inclusivity. When I joined the ELCA, I grew up in other religious traditions, so some historically Black traditions. I've been an ELCA pastor now for about 35 years. Next year will be 35 years fully. I just realized I should celebrate next year.
Yeah, absolutely.
And because of that, coming out of other traditions, I grew up Catholic in a way. I was confirmed. I've been a part of the Baptist traditions. I've been Church of God in Christ, Pentecostal traditions, Apostolic. I have been in many other religious traditions. My dad was a Muslim, and, I grew up in an interfaith family, but I found a home in the ELCA because I saw it as a place of acceptance connecting
Yeah.
and engaging. Again, I keep reiterating this, without threat, and seeing a way for learning amongst each other. I'll say this and I'll end. I say the ELCA dates everybody. That's one of the things that I love that we have in our full communion partnerships. So even though we're 28 ELCA schools, there are 54 or so Presbyterian schools that we have full connection with. We have full communion with the United Methodist tradition. And so, there are 100 some odd schools that are founded through the United Methodism or the Methodist pathways. We have strong relationships with historically Black Methodist traditions like the AME Church, the AME Zion Church. And so that's what makes us beautiful. It's almost like we're the hub, right? We're the everybody friendly place, but for purpose, not just for the sake of gathering together to sing kumbaya, because we want to gather and learn from each other. That makes us a critical leader, a best leader in the world around us, because we know who our neighbors are. We know who's in our communities, right? And so people don't live in bubbles anymore. We know our Jewish neighbors, and we've done the work.
Yeah.
We've done the work of reconciliation, right? And with our other religious traditions. So that's what gives us a strength, if you will, or a pivot point to be unique.
Well, and I think that is excellent points, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted parents and counselors to be aware of the ELCA colleges and universities. I also want to point out that students don't have, for most of the colleges and universities for the ELCA, they're not required to take, it's not courses in Lutheranism. It's required in exploring your faith and spirituality and how you are connected to the world. As you said, the greater purpose idea. It's not that we need to have you learn about Christianity and learn about Lutheranism. Like, no, that's part of the courses available if people want to do that, but it's not like you have to take these, like some of the religious colleges out there. You have to take, our particular faith in order to graduate from our school, and that's different. I think the other thing that I noticed with the ELCA colleges and universities is the inclusiveness of the LGBTQAI community, both as students, as faculty and staff, as well as in the pastoral leadership that you see involved with the various campuses and schools. So you're not just talking the talk. I've noticed that the colleges are also walking the walk and really embracing their neighbor as themselves and including everyone, regardless of identity, background, race, socioeconomic class. That's the other thing I don't think people are aware, that over 40% of your overall students across the 28 colleges and universities are first generation. And so you're really working hard to give access to students who have not had access to higher education for whatever reason. And you're, I don't know if you're the leader in that, but you're really making a huge difference amongst first generation students and families.
Yeah, definitely. Because again, a part of our DNA, and I thank you for mentioning that about the religious things, because people who are Lutheran are lamenting that some of our colleges feel like they have moved away from some of the faith-based or faith-entrenched educational opportunities. And I say that's not true. I think that we have learned that we have this sacred gift in Lutheran theology and Christian theology that we are able to infuse in our practices, right? And that gets infused into the curriculum. So, and don't get us, like, we're liberal arts institutions, but don't play us cheap. We have great schools that are strong in STEM and biomedical research and nursing. Some key areas at like Augustana College University in South Dakota has some great engineering programs. Our PLU is strong in the sciences group. Augustana College in Rock Island, Illinois, strong area in the nursing. In fact, we just acquired Trinity School of Nursing, so that's how we're expanding. So there are other ways that are very key that are beyond or expand the liberal arts education, because we want doctors to understand their purpose as well as a politician, right?
Right.
So we're about bridging the ethical and moral imagination of our students rather than just focusing on the religious nature of our students. So how this happens, Chuck, is because our colleges are really designed to believe in and engage and foster courageous conversations.
Yeah.
We're not afraid to have courageous conversations. We're not coming with a fundamentalistic view, right? And really developing as a part of our core values, the freedom to challenge one another respectfully.
Yes.
Right? Right. And so our discernment is not about cancellation, right? In this sense of cancel culture. If you're not like me, I'm going to cancel. That's tribalism that often does that. But really a stewardship of community well-being, which is powerful.
That is.
Developing these networks of community. Listen, let me tell you something. I know this is, you didn't ask me this, but this veers off into the power of HBCUs, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm a graduate of one, right? I'm a part of a network because of the safe space that was given for us to learn how to be Black, in my case, Morehouse man, Black men, young Black men, yep. And raising us up to be leaders in a society that often is fragmented. And we lean into our vocational identity by saying that we are truly a part of the Imago Dei, right? God loves us. God created us, right? The image of God is a part of who I am. And then to your point earlier, that's the same thing that we have open and providing safe spaces for the LGBTQ community, right? Plus, and because giving them the opportunity to be in an environment where the leadership, the boards, the presidents, the VPs for student affairs, and even the housekeeping engineers, right, are designed to create an atmosphere of respect and dignity for everyone, all inclusive, none exclusive. And we love that first generation students because that's also a part of our DNA. We came here as Lutherans to America, right, in a way to free some of those polemic kinds of things and those things that cause dissonance in people's ability to thrive and to flourish. And that's what our schools do.
Those are all incredible, awesome points. There's one thing that I didn't realize. So having grown up in the ELCA, I saw a lot of women pastors and a very diverse leadership. And I didn't realize that was unusual. I thought that was the normal living and growing up in the ELCA. So then when I started interacting with other faith communities and backgrounds, and I'm not anything against the other communities, but my norm was like, I was seeing women leaders, I was seeing diverse people as leaders. And then I was like, oh, wait, other faith traditions don't have that as much. I was going, oh, okay. So that, especially within some of the more mainstream Protestant denominations. So I was just like, I was surprised. And then you see that really amplified on the colleges and universities, and you go, wow, okay. I was looking through many of the presidents of the ELCA college and universities are women, like that is not common in higher education.
Yeah, they are. Chuck, that's how I became Lutheran. I grew up in the Baptist tradition, right? But in Philadelphia, where a sense of, just like the Jewish tradition in Philadelphia is very progressive. Like the Reconstructionist Jewish tradition founded strongly here in this area, which is open and affirming to all kinds of, unorthodox ways of being in their faith tradition. In the Baptist tradition up here, I grew up under women leaders and women pastors where there's some other religious traditions in the Baptist tradition that don't allow that. When I went down south to join a Baptist church, I found that they wouldn't allow women up in the pulpit. Women had to read scriptures and they couldn't serve in leadership. And I said, let me get out of here. And I left the tradition and found my theological home, if you will, in this Lutheran tradition. And again, it's not a perfect place. Right. Because none of us are, but we are perfectly striving to expand access and resource and make ourselves connected to each other and more connected to God. Yeah.
I am pulling up the website. So as people are wanting to learn more about the the network of ELCA colleges and universities, go to necuelca.org. That's a whole lot of letters. It's going to be in the show notes for people to be able to find the website, but it's necuelca.org. And it's a great resource to help students and families learn about the 28 institutions that are here. And as I said earlier on in the show, I bet a lot of people have heard of some of these places and didn't realize that they were an ELCA type school. Have you been able to visit all 28 yet?
Listen, you caught me at a time when I just have completed I've been in the role for 4 years, 3.5, almost 4 years. And it took me quite a bit of time to get to it. And I just completed Midland University. I was their commencement speaker there in Nebraska this year. And that became the final school that I finally got all the rounds to attend. So, yeah.
That's awesome. I think that you have been able to visit all of them is really great. I'm going to pull up the map here to show people really that you are, as you said before, they're predominantly on the East Coast and here in the Midwest. I was born and raised in Michigan. My family's from Minnesota, and I currently live in Wisconsin. Minnesota is the unofficial religion of Minnesota, I think, is the ELCA. But there's a lot of great opportunities for students to explore. And I work with a lot of students who are willing to travel to a different college if it's the right fit. And so there are a host of schools really all across the Midwest, but around the country. There are West Coast and Southern opportunities as well. I think the other thing that I always recommend ELCA schools for are students who are passionate about music, because many of these colleges and universities have particularly strong music departments, as in particular choir, again, coming from a Martin Luther idea, who believed that the congregation should be able to sing. And so I grew up in that tradition, and our congregation was pretty darn good, I may add. But the colleges then emulate that, and you have for students who love to sing and who are passionate about being in choir, again, it is you're going to be singing Christian music, but there's also I've watched a lot of these concerts on YouTube.
It expands,
right.
Yeah.
Right. But you know, for students who are like, oh, I don't usually sing Christian music, well, you're gonna have some of it. You are gonna like I'm sorry, but if you've ever turned on the St. Olaf Christmas special on public broadcasting, you will see what it is. Now, St. Olaf is probably the most well-known of the ELCA colleges and universities, but there are some really great opportunities here. And I love the connection that these colleges and universities have to the history of teaching music and connecting to the musical world.
Chuck, and so I always give kudos and give credit where credit is due. St. Olaf has done an amazing job of marketing, and I celebrate all of my schools as their executive director. So I do lift up St. Olaf's choir, but I have most enjoyed Luther College Choir, Concordia College. I mean, these choirs have knocked me off my feet. They are amazing. Gustavus, you talk about St. Olaf's Christmas program. Watch St. Gustavus Adolphus Christmas cantata and program. It's amazing. It's beautiful, the voices, and it's a part of our tradition. Again, the ability and the desire to sing. You'll go into the average Lutheran congregation and you'll wonder, does everybody know how to read music in here? Because it's a part of our connection, and you're taught and you use it. And what I had to get used to when I came in this tradition, for our hymn book in my predecessor bodies, we used to sing like maybe the first and the first verse. No. We're going to sing all 5 or all 7 verses of a hymn. So you have to have some patience, if you will, and you have to really be a lover and an enjoyer of a connoisseur, even to some points, for music, because we believe in that strongly, because it tells the story.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And my spouse had to get used to that as well, going to an ELCA service. We're like, no, we're going to sing all 4 verses.
Yeah.
which
And you
is
talk about
laughable.
that Christian context, right? So those purity concepts, again, get into it and understanding, connecting you to your faith. I don't know how true this is, but I've always heard in the tradition that one of the famous Lutheran songs that Martin Luther wrote, particularly, was "A Mighty Fortress Is Our God," right? Like that particular hymn. And they tell me that he wrote that hymn on the back of a bar napkin and while sitting at a bar, right? So just imagine that. And I'm not promoting alcoholism by any stretch of the imagination. I want to be very clear about that. But what I'm talking about is a high level of connectivity to the human experience, to the human reality, right? And that is not seen as conflictual to our identity as people of faith and our connection to God. So you'll get that at a Lutheran institution because it's a part of our DNA. So we don't judge and we don't point fingers and we don't exclude based on some of the facets of things that, particularly in Western culture, have been very exclusive to women and minorities and people for their sexual identity.
Right. For those of you who are listening and not watching on the YouTube channel, these colleges are located everywhere from Washington State, California, Texas, North Dakota, South Dakota, Kansas, Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, West Virginia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and many other states on the East Coast. So they're really scattered throughout the country. So if you are looking for this type of opportunity, there is probably an ELCA college or university in a location near you, or a place where you would like to go to college. They are all either in the small category or the medium category.
Yes, I would say.
I'm trying to think of other things that would make them all kind of common. They all have collegiate athletics, and so students can be involved in athletics. And I think the one thing that really connects to some of the ideas that you've talked about is that every ELCA college and university offers scholarships to students, and they really want to make this a financially great decision for students and families. In fact, I'll share one of my students this year was admitted to one of the ELCA colleges, which turned out to be much more cost-effective than for them to go to their own state institution. And the ELCA college was in a different state in a different part of the country. And comparing it to staying in state and going to the state institution, the student actually was going to save money by leaving the state and going to an ELCA school rather than staying at home, which I think was quite impressive.
Yeah. And there are opportunities. We have some schools that, and particularly with athletics, that are Division I. Wagner, Division I basketball. I want to promote that. Last year they made it to the Sweet 16. They didn't make it this year, right? But again, so you have that high level of engagement. We have Division I hockey for those that are in the Midwest. I went to my first hockey game at Augustana University in South Dakota there last year. My first ever, and I'm from Philly, so we're a true Philly fan like that. So I hope anybody doesn't kill me for not being a fan of the Flyers directly, right? But everything else, Eagles and Sixers, I'm good. But my point is that so you can play at any level in our institutions. So again, if that is a part of your desire, then I think that people really should take a look at us, because you're getting more value than just being a number on those big campuses. I've had to struggle because, raising nephews and nieces and things like that, and being more cost effective, I started to veer them towards public or state institutions. And I understand the need to do that. And I understand the need to go, particularly because I came out of school and the times that I did with a lot of debt. But that now we have been strategizing in these institutions to be clear that we don't want people to graduate and leave with burdens. And so there is great philanthropy. Lutherans, as a part of giving and creating global phenomenons and networks, give to a lot of organizations, and they give to our institutions so that you don't have to struggle to pay for them. Higher education has gone up. I saw in the Chronicle this morning by 4.4%, the tuition rates or whatever. And a part of the work that I do is to help advocate for keeping these levels, these tuition levels at a an affordable and a base level, and then seeking other opportunities to scaffold people once you identify your purpose, because that's what we want to push. We want to help you with your why, right? Your why in life. What are you called to do? Because we want to develop communities, and we see ourselves as a public good. I know there's a big issue of trust in higher education and public trust or whatever, and even against the church and religious organizations. People don't trust them as they did. Our institutions are not threatening to individuals and not trying to doctrinize or indoctrinate individuals, but really to create you and living into your divine purpose, right? Your why, so that you can go out and flourish. And we see that as planting a seed in you, if you will, that will germinate and grow in the future so that everyone will flourish and all shall be well.
That was so very well said. I don't even know how I can react to that. I do want to share, as you shared earlier, the mission of the network and what is going on there. So the mission statement says that you articulate a vision for Lutheran higher education in North America that finds expression in the rich and diverse missions of its member institutions to support the distinctive strengths of these institutions and their common calling in higher education. The NECU sustains relationships among its member institutions and with the ELCA and the ELC in Canada, providing leadership, development, and other collaborative opportunities for its member institutions. So you, as I said before we started recording, you have one of the best jobs out there. You get to work with some of America's and Canada's really interesting and powerful institutions, and I hope this has helped counselors, parents, and students learn about a new group of colleges that they may not have been aware of.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah, and I do. Sometimes I want to keep that quiet, right? So that people don't, I want to hide and people don't bother me. But again, that's the problem. We keep things hidden and not expanding. And I'm confident enough that there's enough there. I don't believe in a zero-sum game mentality, right? There's enough for us out here. And thank you for the work that you're doing, particularly connecting students to higher ed, because all of this is like a part of the synergy that's going to keep our nation and our world thriving and loving our neighbor, loving each other, caring for each other, so that we are living into our best selves.
Yeah, I feel like the network of ELCA colleges and universities is one of the best kept secrets in higher ed, and I didn't want that. So that's why I reached out to you, and I was like, you are providing access, inclusion, support, opportunities for students and families, and that is the mission and the goal of Don't Chuck It Up, is to help students and parents find those opportunities. So I wanted to lift up the ELCA colleges and universities as a place for students and families to explore as an opportunity for higher education.
Yes, give us a look. www.necuelca.org. NECUELCA.org.
Yep, and we will have that in the show notes for those who are listening or watching. Well, Lamont, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your very, very busy schedule to come on the Don't Chuck It Up podcast today. Do you have any final words of wisdom that you'd like to share with students, parents, and counselors who might be listening?
There are a lot of opportunities to choose all kinds of schools, right? I mean, there are over 4,000 or so schools and opportunities that are there. I think to connect to faith-affiliated higher education at its best, that is distinct and not indoctrinating and not overbearing, is key to look at, because when you want your child or your students want for themselves to find their sense of purpose in life, you don't always get to do that at institutions that don't talk about ethics and moral integrity and trust and those kinds of things, and creating an opportunity for belonging. So I would say, again, look at faith-affiliated higher education, and particularly our Lutheran institutions that are positioning themselves in this world at this time to promote a true sense of belonging and a true sense of wellness and a whole person education, right? This is not vocation about getting a trade. right? Because that's the differentiation. But it's the vocation about seeing the sense of the calling, if you will, the why in your life. And we want to help you and your families to lean into that. And you can find that at any of our institutions that are part of the network of ELCA colleges and universities.
Very well said again. Again, thank you for taking the time. I have really appreciated this, and I really am thankful for all the work that you are doing to support students and families and the ELCA colleges and universities across the United States and Canada. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, folks, thanks for listening to Don't Chuck It Up. If today's episode was helpful, be sure to subscribe and share it with the family who is navigating the college search and the application process. I'll be back next week with more tips and tricks. Until then, remember, don't chuck it up.